Hello guys and welcome to my February wrap up. So I'm trying to create like a cozy vibe for my sit down videos, but I feel like I still kind of need to figure it out because I don't really know if I like how this looks. But as I mentioned before, I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in February. So I read 9 books, 5 manhwas, and I also DNF'd 4 books. This month, if I'm being honest, if I compare it to January, it wasn't the best reading month. In January, I felt like I gave a lot of books 5 stars, but in this month, I did give a few books 5 stars, but I think overall there were certain books that I was kind of disappointed about, and I feel like a majority of books, I either enjoyed them or I just extremely disliked some of them. But the first book that I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I absolutely loved. It reminded me very much of Miss Peregrine's Home for Particular Children because it's about this world where there are children who have, I guess, like quirks or like special powers, and they are sent to live in these orphanages. Linus Baker, who is our main character, kind of lives in this mundane, monotonous world where he works in a department where he goes to these orphanages and kind of determines whether or not they are, I guess, like good for the children that lives there. So he has a task to visit this island where there's a bunch of kids who have very strong prejudice against them and are seen as like really scary creatures and everything. And what I really like about this book is that we get to see how every character in this book grows. We get to see the bond between Linus Baker and the children that he meets, and Arthur, who is, I guess, like the caretaker, and just seeing how their relationship develops over time, because obviously the children are very standoffish when they first meet. I don't know, something about that is heartwarming, and I love plots like that where you can really see their relationship develop, and you can see as the children really open up to a kind of like father figure. So I just really like the way that the book was written, and I love the like really, I guess, like comforting vibe that it had. And as I mentioned before, it really gave me like very much nostalgic fantasy kind of vibes. So I really like this book. But then I read Only Mostly Devastated, which unfortunately I didn't like this book that much. I read another book of this author and I loved that book, so I was really excited to read this one. But then I read it and I was like, I don't know. Basically, our MC has a summer fling with the male lead. He ends up then moving to the school that the male lead attends. And, the romance in this book sucks, which is mainly why I read this book, right? Because I want to read some like fluffy romance, but no. The male lead basically has internalized homophobia because he isn't out to his parents yet, and that is all understandable, you know. However, I feel like he treats the MC so badly because the way that he says some stuff is so like passive aggressive in a way where it clearly hurts the MC, but the male lead only apologizes because he realizes that it upsets the MC, not because he realizes that what he said was wrong. So I just didn't really like the chemistry or the relationship, especially because it just felt like this toxic cycle of the MC kind of chasing after the male lead just doing stuff to kind of hurt him, and the whole entire time the MC is like, oh my god, he's so hot, but I just didn't care. I think another issue was that they had this whole summer fling, right? But I just didn't care about it. I felt like they honestly had no chemistry. So the whole entire time I was reading the romance and I was like, eh. Also, I hated all the other characters. Like, there was this whole other romance going on, and in my opinion, I felt like all the characters in this book were kind of annoying. I was really excited to read I'm Not Jessica Chen because it's written by Anne Lean, whose books I really loved. After reading this book, I realized that Anne Lean's books, they're kind of all the same. And unfortunately, although I did enjoy I'm Jessica Chen, it wasn't like my absolute favorite, and in a way I was kind of disappointed because I felt like I wanted more out of this book. My favorite part about Anne Lean's books are kind of the men, if I'm being honest. I just like the way that they are written to have like this really strong, unrequited, one-sided love where the male lead really likes the female lead, but then the female lead is just kind of focused on her academics and doesn't realize that. And I love the way that she writes her male leads. But I think the issue with this book was that the male lead barely in the book. Like, he was probably 20% into the book, and I felt like there was this whole situation of where they had this whole confession scene. I thought that the confession scene was cute, but then there was this whole thing of them liking each other, and then stuff didn't end up working out. And I feel like the way that it was explained just didn't really make sense to me, especially because they're literally teenagers, and I felt like the feelings that they had for each other was so strong at 15 years old, and I was like, is it really that serious? And I think overall, like the whole plot of exchanging bodies and stuff like that, I don't know, it was just a little bit boring for me, and I think I wanted more from the romance, and I swear the male lead was barely there. So Hot British Boyfriend, honestly, like out of all the romance books that I read, because I made a video where I read romance books for Valentine's Day, out of all the romance books that I read, I think this one was actually my favorite because it was what I was looking for. It was just really fluffy. There were certain parts that were like really cringy, and like I knew what was going to happen, and I knew I was going to get secondhand embarrassment. But in terms of the romance, I actually really liked the romance, and I liked it was cute. Like, it was cute. I feel like in a way as well, the main character was kind of charming, even though she was kind of cringy and a little bit boy obsessed. She also was pretty cute because she was into fairy gardens, and I wish I could get into that hobby. Also, I really liked her friends in this book. I love Sage, who is like her roommate. It was a cute little book. Okay, this we have to talk about. Somewhere Beyond the Sea. This is the second book to The House in the Cerulean Sea, and this is why I was excited to read Somewhere Beyond the Sea, because I was like, The House in the Cerulean Sea was so good. It has a sequel. Gotta read the sequel. I didn't like the sequel. I didn't like it at all. Honestly, I feel like Somewhere Beyond the Sea lost all the charm that The House in the Cerulean Sea had, and I felt like I should have never read that book. It should not have been written. I just feel like the issue with that book is that all the progress that we made in the first book kind of felt like it was undone, because all the children and their personalities, it felt like it wasn't there anymore. It felt like they were just put into the book for, I guess, comedic purposes. And I don't know, this book has like a really strong message behind it, but I felt like the way that it was executed wasn't really done well. And I think compared to the first book, I was pretty disappointed. I read Law and Lust, which was one of my favorite like vampire romance books. It's just something that's like very fast and easy to read, right? However, while rereading this book, I was like, it's actually not as good as I remembered it being. So that's a little bit sad, and yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be rereading this ever again. It's so interesting. I'm just like, how could I love a series so much? I reread it. This is my third time rereading it. How could I love a series so much? And then my third time rereading it, I'm kind of like, this wasn't as good as I remembered it being. How did I think it was so good the first time round of reading it? Like, I honestly don't know. I then reread Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which I absolutely loved. We're getting to Harry's angsty teenager years after everything went wrong, and then the ending and everything is worse. But I'm really excited to read Half-Blood Prince. I'm gonna read it this month because my goal was to read one Harry Potter book each month. So this month is Half-Blood Prince. I then read Rebel, and I've been meaning to finish this series. What was it called? Legend series by Marie Lu, but I've been meaning to finish it for a while. Completely just never read Rebel, and it was okay. Like, it was a good conclusion to the series, happy ending, which I'm really happy about, but I don't know, I kind of found it a little bit boring, and I wished it focused more on, I guess, the dystopian elements rather than the romance. The last book that I read in February was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and I absolutely love this book. Emily Wilde, I swear, is just like such a comfort series for me. It's about fairies. I love the way that it is written. It's so like whimsical, and I love Emily so much. Like, I admire her character so much, how she just kind of goes after what she's interested in, and she really trusts her instincts, and she's stubborn. You know, she gets things done. And I love Wendell as well. Like, I love him. I love them together. I'm going to be talking about the manhwas that I read. So we have You Get Me Going, which was a really good, I guess, like work office enemies to lovers kind of thing. And you know what? My Dearest Nemesis was also that. My Dearest Nemesis is a manhwa. So we have manhwas, which are Chinese, and manhwas, which are Korean. I actually don't know how to pronounce them because I feel like the way that they're written is kind of the same, and I don't know why people don't like manhwas, even though I feel like the art is so pretty, but the story is so cute because it stems from like school. Like, I don't know, it's just a really cute story. And like You Get Me Going, it's also like this office enemies to lovers kind of story. We have Banana Scandal, which I think this is my newest kind of like favorite manhwa. I have like a list of BL manhwas that I really like, but Banana Scandal is so good. I'm talking like season 2, season 3. Love season 1, but season 2 and season 3 really did it for me. The chasing arc, the art, I loved it. And I still reread it to this day because, oh, I regret not reading it early. The thing is, I've heard a lot of people talk about Banana Scandal, and then I tried reading it, and then I was like, this art, it's not really for me. But then I was like, so many people were talking about Banana Scandal, so it must be good. And then I read it, and then I was like, should have read it earlier. But you know, everything happens for a reason. I then read Sparkling Baby, which was a very like short story, and Cheeky Habits of My Rabbit, which I honestly just wanted to read this because of the actual rabbit, because in this world there are creatures that can turn into like animals and then humans, and then this one is about a rabbit, and I was like, the rabbit is cute. Like, the way that they draw like kids and animals in manhwas are really cute. And just like the whole idea of this rabbit who lives with this human, but then he turns into a human when his human is working, and then he like does a bunch of random stuff. I don't know. Let's talk about the books that I DNF'd, because as I mentioned before, I DNF'd 4 books. First one, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. Okay, I have a lot of things to say about this book, but I don't want to get too into it. But I have been wanting to read this book for a really long time. The reason why I DNF'd it was because, if I'm being honest, Hazel was annoying, and she mentions that like the reason why people don't like her is because she's such like an eccentric and quirky character, which, you know, now that makes me feel bad, but that's honestly why I didn't like this book, because she was annoying in my opinion. Josh and Hazel, their chemistry, I just didn't like how, I guess the way that they looked at each other was based on the physical attraction rather than the emotional attraction, and just like, I'm telling you, the characters, I just didn't like it. And it's the way that certain books are written that kind of just like ticks me off, and this one unfortunately did that, and I just got so mad reading it, so I was like, I'm just gonna DNF it. The Ministry of Time I DNF'd just because I was bored, and I was excited to read it because, you know, a lot of people have talked about it. It has a lot of hype, but I think maybe it's just not a book for me, or it may be just because I literally felt like nothing was going on, because we were just getting, I guess, their daily life, which makes sense because we're seen as they kind of like get used to the modern world. But I don't know, to me it was just like kind of slow, kind of boring, and I just didn't really want to pick it up. That's kind of the same reason why I DNF'd The Last of August, because I just didn't really want to read it, if I'm being honest. I don't know if it's because I wasn't in the mood, but I think it was just something about the way that it was written that I didn't like. And I didn't like how the main characters, literally it's this whole mystery thriller kind of book, but the whole entire time they're talking about like the romance, and I just didn't like the MC because he was a little bit, something about him felt like a little bit too cocky and a little bit annoying, so I didn't like being in his, I guess, point of view. And then the last book that I DNF'd was Husband Material, which I actually made my way through it a lot, and I think that's what got me into a reading slump, unfortunately. So because of that, I was like, I think I'll just DNF the book because I'm clearly not enjoying it, even though I read so much of it. Like, I think even when I started it, I knew that I didn't like it, but then I just forced myself to read it, and because of that, I got into a reading slump, which is why I don't recommend reading books if you don't enjoy them. But yeah, that's basically all the books that I read in February. I'm hoping that next month, technically this month, March, I have a better reading month. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that jazz. And I will see you guys in another video. Bye!